everyone. I'm Jennifer Siramboli, the co-founder and CEO of Studio B. Welcome to our webinar series, Meet Your Center. We are honored and humbled to welcome to the program today internationally recognized yoga and meditation teachers and my longtime teachers and mentors, Sarah and Ty Powers. Sarah and Ty are the founders of the Insight Yoga Institute and founding members of Studio B. Sarah is the creator of Insight Yoga and author of 2 books, including the forthcoming Lit from Within. We are also very honored to welcome as host Phillip Moffitt, former co-guiding teacher from the Spirit Rock Meditation Center and the founder of the Life Balance Institute. He's also the creator of the internationally recognized program for changes and transitions. The former editor-in-chief and CEO of Esquire magazine, Phillip has authored 3 books, including Dancing with Life, Emotional Chaos to Clarity, and Awakening Through the 9 Bodies. It is my honor and my privilege to turn the program over today to Phillip, Sarah, and Ty. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And I am very happy to be in this new relationship with Sarah and Ty, where we have been friends for over 20 years and really good friends, and have other kinds of practice relationships, and among other things, Ty as a strategist, a trained strategist in my change and transition certification program. And of course, you know both of them well, those of you who are regular followers here of Studio B. And so what we're doing today, that is an experiment, and we ask your tolerance with us as we learn to do this, is we're exploring the nature of relationship, that a kind of relationship between 2 people that is in some form of coupledom. It can be a marriage, it can be a long-term relationship, it can be a committed relationship of living together as 2 friends that's not a sexually based or not even a romantic based, but it is a love-based relationship between 2 people. We're interested in that interplay as to how the 2 people interact together in a way that empowers and supports both of them in a way that creates a healthy long-term relationship. So wide variety in that. Likewise, we want to acknowledge the great diversity that is now springing forth in regards to relationship of all sorts, of every kind of diversity that one can imagine, and the newfound expression within the LGBTQIA plus world and those relationships, but also in terms of every other sort of situation, including thruples and having a group commitment where people are in long-term group commitments together. We're not addressing all of those separate challenges that various subpopulations or non-dominant culture populations are having. But what we know is that in common, people have to work out their relationships with those that they are intimate with. They're in a committed, intimate relationship where they are committed in some way to supporting each other and to having this third emerge, which is the feeling between them that is so beautiful in a relationship that really works. Those of us who are around a relationship, which in my view, Ty and Sarah have, we too benefit from this feeling of that presence. And we're going to explore what it feels like, various words to describe it, and so forth. If at any point we use language that's unskillful or coming out of ignorance, we want to own that in advance and ask your tolerance, and we welcome feedback and helping us learn. This is something we're very committed to, the three of us, is that we learn how to be more skilled and more inclusive in our language. So I'd like to start with having both you, Ty, and you, Sarah, address what if you were saying to someone, or how people say to you when they're being admiring of your relationship. What's the name of a relationship? I say this is a relationship that really works. I will use that word. This is an inspiring relationship. I've even at times used the word successful relationship, but then I go, well, what would that mean to say successful? So I don't actually know what word to use. And so maybe you can help me with this. We have not done any of these questions in advance, so we're having an authentic conversation amongst the three of us. So would you just give me a few words that you might use?
A long-term commitment to growing with a partner.
Long-term commitment to growing with a partner. I know what that means. Ty?
I would say not only love at all the levels that one can imagine that word to mean, but a commitment to the cultivation of that and respect.
Love, a commitment to cultivation of that, and respect.
Mhm.
So we each can think of our own relationship that we're in now, or we've been in the past, or the relationship that we're looking for the future, and just notice what resonates for you in this regard. So as when you started your relationship together, which one of you can say how long ago that was if you like, but when you started this relationship, did you have this idea, I'm signing up for the long haul?
I will say that, yeah, I did. And
No, I
no.
did not. I was too young to conceptualize long term. We have been together this year, will be 40 years living together.
Such an accomplishment. I mean, just proud of that.
So I was, as I like to say, I was a toddler and
And I was
couldn't
a
conceive
pedophile.
of the future. I thought that it sounded like a fun idea to let people know we were more than just the idea of boyfriend and girlfriend. I had thought at that young woman time that I would never get married, but somehow, we didn't actually plan it. His father thought he heard us talking about getting married, but we weren't. And then he raised a glass of champagne, and the other family members started standing up and toasting. And so we looked at each other, realizing that they were misunderstanding, but we looked at each other almost winking, going, well, okay, party sounds good.
And it actually
Very,
brought them
very inspiring.
it actually brought them such joy. I mean, the thing maybe she's not remembering is that I forget who it was, but somebody at the table started crying. My brother lit up a cigarette. He doesn't necessarily smoke all the time, but it was impactful to everyone who heard it. And so we realized this really makes
other people happy, and we make each other happy. So it felt like, for me, I was saved the rumination of, will this last? Is this the right person? So many people can spend so much time imagining something other than what's happening right now. And I was very much present with how safe and how loved and how much I had grown already. We had already been together 3 years at that point, living together, and felt like, if this continues on, great, we can call it a marriage. If it doesn't, there's other definitions we can reorganize down the line. So I felt very buoyant about it.
And the way she was about it, did that feel okay with you, Ty?
So let's just say that I was patient.
We will acknowledge that as patience, and this has to do with the back and forth in relationship that way. At what point did you first go, oh, I gotta sign up here at another level for the challenging part, the difficult part. How far into the marriage were you when you started to realize, oh, there's a whole nother challenge here? Which I'm assuming that happened, of course.
I'm interested to hear what Ty will say. My feeling is not until 10 years in when we decided, or at least I did, that it was time to have a child. For me, it was very visceral and connected to something I couldn't have named at the time. I just felt like there's something that needs to shift here and a deeper commitment and wanting to share that together. I think he would have waited maybe another 10 years. and then being pregnant and being very sick at first, and all that required to be suddenly taken care of, because I have a strong side that is very independent, and suddenly I was bedridden and throwing up every half an hour and really needing support in a new way. And then, of course, once having a newborn, and I really saw the quality of his caretaking side became so sensitive and tender that I felt like this is going to be such a new journey parenting together. And now I'm growing up in a way I've never felt before.
Mm. Now that's beautiful. Thank you.
Mm.
Ty?
So it would have been a little bit earlier for me, in that there was this real sense when we first met that this is really my girl. That I found her. And then there was a split that happened for about a year where we didn't see each other. That's a long story, which I won't get into here. But when we came back together and this commitment started, we had a few really beautiful months together. And then there started to be something that occurred in terms of the dynamic between us that needed to be addressed. And that was a moment of, let's see how she responds to this request. And that was a moment that shifted into, so I've got what I like to say about her, an uncommon person here who is really responsive to being challenged. And it's interesting because the dynamic has shifted over the years, in the sense that she is a little more challenging towards me than I was towards her in the early years. And it's been a nice shift in that sense. I'm a little more easygoing, if you will. I wouldn't call myself necessarily easygoing, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm a little more like that. And she will bring things to me that need to be addressed. And I think that level of challenge and flexibility in being comfortable, getting comfortable, not being comfortable with what's arising, and being able to stay present to that. That's, everyone who's listening to this knows that's not an easy deal to carry on. So the fact that we've been able to really bounce back and forth with that. I mean, of course, there have been times when, you can't say that to me, and, I won't hear that, and all that stuff. And then the following day, I'm sorry, you were right. You were dead on, or whatever. So, yeah.
What I hear when I hear this is that you discovered, as every couple needs to do, that you could have this kind of deep trust in the relationship, even, and you discovered that you each had a caring, responsive nature that was trustworthy. And one thing that I've always struck me about you, both the two of you, is that you are so mindful in your interactions with each other. There is like you appear, when I'm around you, to be conscious of your effect on the other, and and you include it in a way that's oftentimes you can be around a couple and they seem to need to be so distant from each other to have their own identity. But you, both of you, clearly have your own identity when I'm around you, and I've been around you in so many different circumstances, and yet there is that kind of you stay related, And that's what I would say to our audience for this conversation. That's something for you to notice and to develop in yourself. I, by the way, have conducted a number of marriages. I'm getting ready to conduct a ceremony 1st of November. And then, but I've also, as both a Dharma teacher and helping people in changes and transitions, I have heard thousands of stories about couples. And so I'm not a trained therapist of any kind, particularly a couples counselor. I would not be one of my aspirations. Too much work for me. But I do have I have a big sample base from which to make remarks. So one of the other things you both were referring to in that was trust. And does that word ever come up between you, or did it ever come up like, yes, we are committed to being trustworthy, or trust, or that we know that trust? Just how's that played out with the two of you?
That word feels like it's more implicit from my side, and something that Kai exudes. I think most people listening would feel that about him. There's something so deeply integral in his connectedness to himself and to everyone, that I was the one that didn't have the level of self-trust that he came into the relationship with. So I was less trustworthy all around.
Mm-hmm.
And being 9 years younger, that played into it as well. So I was in the process of learning about myself with therapists, unpacking more insecure attachment patterns, whereas he has secure attachment patterns to both his parents and grandparents that were in the house and raised him. So there was a dynamic of being reparented in my 20s with him that accelerated a sense of inner healing of the heart, and then becoming more a partner to him. So I appreciate when you spoke before, you said you had to be patient. And I'm surprised and feel so grateful that he stuck around for me to slowly grow up.
Yeah, thank you. Ty?
Yeah, I was just going to say at the end of that last question, trust emerges. You really have to cultivate that, and you have to call it when you're feeling that that's something that's not present. And of course, as part of the Buddha Dharma, the essence of the Dharma is to know oneself. And if you don't know yourself, by definition, you're not trustworthy. And so there's also the recognition that I can't expect until full enlightenment that either one of us is going to be fully trustworthy, right?
Yes.
And there's a level of integrity that one brings to a relationship, to be sure, but there's still the element of being human. And so if I don't know who I am, it's going to be really impossible to fully share that in an integral way with you.
Thank you. Quite insightful. So my own observation is that relationships that have lasted through time in a way that both really have shared satisfaction, as opposed to one enduring, is a real commitment to trust. And I, as a young man, did not. I thought truth was the answer, but I'm much more now seeing trust. And when I counsel, I won't marry someone that I don't do counseling with ahead of time, where we don't go through some self-examination. And one of the things I stress is that both of you have to have some commitment to becoming ever more trustworthy. So it's a direction. It's what in Buddhism they call a wise view, meaning your goal, the direction, wise aspiration, is to be a trusting person. And sometimes to be a trusting person, the other person makes mistakes in ways where they weren't trustworthy, and how that is handled makes all the difference in the world. So it can be that they can repeatedly, put you down in front of others or something, which I always just shrink from. I say that happen. Or it can be something more. One can get an infatuation, or one can not carry their share of the load. There's all these different ways one can have, quote, a trust issue. But if the commitment is towards the trusting, the way I witnessed with the two of you, then a relationship has a higher, much higher chance of actually being a dynamic, empowering, mutually empowering relationship.
Beautifully
So,
said.
yeah, when do you, in relation to when you're having an argument or when you're having a disagreement or there's discomfort, do you ever employ humor to kind of get through? Is that one of your skill sets?
That would be good.
That would be good.
No, thank
No.
you for the honesty.
We would really need to be on different emotional tones during an argument for that to occur. We have really good protectors that get
I
quite
see.
serious about our point of view, shall we say.
Okay. Well, so take that as heart for those of you who can't do humor in the midst of conflict, and those of you who can, then be really grateful, or that your partner can do that, can diffuse a situation with humor. So, what would you say? How do you come back to balance when it's off? Over, I don't mean a long-term argument, but right at the time, there's really these views that, as Sarah said, you hold to quite strongly.
All right, so maybe I guess the first thing that we do now is to pause and soften, and maybe we'll come back to this when our protectors aren't up, because really we're not going to gain any ground here. We're just going to be trying to make our points and be right. And I just never, that never really gets anywhere. So it's nice that we're able now to drop it in a sense until another moment where there's some opening, because that's also about skillful means in a sense. Is this person really open to what I need to say or what I want to say, what I might say right now? And you can feel that. You can really feel that. And I don't know what it is about me sometimes. There's a stubbornness, or all of us really, that kind of gets in there, and I'm going to say it right now anyway. And, it's always gone wrong. It's never landed as it should. And so, yeah.
Such wisdom.
Yeah. That growth from impulsivity, and I've got to work this out now and be the one that is on the side of right and bring him over, which it's amazing how many times you can expect that maybe will happen this time with the force of the vitriol that's coming out at him. And then now I do feel like choosing a partner who is interested in using relationship and all actions as insight into where we are on the path of living in an awake way. So this ability to pause and recognize, oh, I'm feeling really triggered right now, yet this is really important to me. Let's pause and come back to this, as he said. But also the recognition that the ability to say I'm sorry soon, not have to wait and be ghosted as if nothing happened. I was very familiar with that in my family of origin. And to be able to have a level of interest in genuine communication, even when it gets prickly and uncomfortable, without becoming cruel, that was something that I was really interested in learning. Just training as a psychotherapist in my early 20s, I think gave him hope that I'm not only trying to heal from what I adopted in my family of origins conditioning, but I'm really wanting to feel into how to mature into someone that can use the feelings and speech as an avenue of insight. And so to be able to say, oh, I'm so sorry I said that way. And I was meaning to hurt you because I was feeling hurt. To really take responsibility and say, can we start again? And have him so many times that there's such a depth of trust now, be there to start again. So not holding grudges and assuming that because I was identified with a part of myself, that defines all of who I am, and then attacking me with definitions that way, that just keeps us more and more apart.
Mm-hmm.
So learning conscious communication from the beginning and loving to share. We're very verbal about many different things, but including our relationship.
Yeah.
And that feels like it's been really valuable and really essential for me.
Okay.
I think she kind of said it all just then. I'm empty right now with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing that I would point out to everyone is that the time Sarah and I share a devotion to the path. So we have that reference. I've had a number of people say to me through the years, while on a retreat, I'm sitting this retreat and I'm realizing I can't stay with my spouse. We're in a one-on-one practice meeting. And when I'm supposed to be hearing about their meditation experience and helping them with technique, but these things come up naturally because that's what's coming up. And they'll say, I can't, I'm realizing I can't stay because I'm so committed to this path. And I'll go, so exactly why is it that you can't stay with your spouse? They'll say, well, they don't have a practice. They don't have a practice like mine. And I go, okay, but are they supportive of you? Yes, well, they are supportive, like, so they're not mad at you for being here, and they don't begrudge, whatever cost and, having to find childcare or whatever's involved in this. Well, no, they're pretty good about that. And I go, so maybe instead of thinking that it has to be another person on the Buddhist path, it has to be someone who's committed to conscious, intentional relationship. And I would say that Ty and Sarah are just such wonderful living examples of a conscious, intentional relationship. It's that the mindfulness is making relationship conscious, and they are intentional. They come back to their values repeatedly. And so with when people are talking about that, about needing their spouse to be different, I point them back to the values of that spouse, and do they have shared values as the way they're living life, and shared values of growing together. And that's what matters, and that way we can all be Buddhas and not Buddhists.
I like that a lot, Phillip.
So this is a piece of wisdom. We're trained in our professions, but we're not trained to be in relation, and we spend more hours in relationship than we do in our professions, and yet we get almost no training. And to go to a therapist, a couples therapist, when you're in trouble, that's really helpful, and we're grateful to have that. But wouldn't it be wonderful to be in a deliberate relationship where this relationship is our growth together? This is our practice. One of our practices is relationship practice, mindful relationship practice. And that's what motivated me and asking Ty and Sarah to do this, is to see if we could bring this out. And again, they didn't know all of this, but they're just right on schedule in terms of what they say. So one of the things that happens, and again, you say only what you feel comfortable saying, but one of the things that I've witnessed endless times is that at different times in a couple's life, there's sexual energy changes, or it can be low, high, it can be going in different kinds of directions, and it's really tough for most couples to stay on the same page about that, for both to be acknowledged. I remember once in a group of meditation teachers, a couple speaking openly about this for them and what they were doing about it. And I was just so impressed that they were that comfortable with themselves, because they thought it would be good for the rest of us to hear. And so in that context, insofar as you're comfortable, any wisdom to offer us about this experience in this way around the sexuality and how it's changed, and any rough spots that you got over, or just whatever you would share that would bring others to more wisdom.
I like this question. I do think it's important for people to feel like they can look deeper inside a long-term relationship and find out what it's like on that level of heart-body, not just depth of commitment. So do you want to start?
You know, it's run the gamut of extraordinary to at times non-existent. And, you know, in starting out, as she said, the intentionality, the commitment to the relationship has been so strong that it never felt like that was at times when it wasn't what it was, or might be again, thankfully again. It never felt like it was something that would be a breaking point. It felt like a point of patience and tolerance with how it was manifesting in the relationship. So this is, you know, we're not on the same track on this right now. And so what does that mean? And for a lot of people, that means, okay, I'm moving on, or I'm getting a sexual partner or something like that. But for the two of us, it was never like that. It was more the open discussion of here's where we are now, and what does that mean? And does it mean enough to say much more about it? Yes, no, maybe. So, and ongoing, I mean, right now it's great. What happens in 5 years, 10 years? I don't know. I'm older. My libido is not what it used to be.
Sometimes I say, thankfully.
and that actually was a source of the problem in my early years.
I feel like there's also been every expression of sexuality between us two in these 4 decades, and the feeling of being in a committed relationship with a man and having started this so young in my life and being such a being of exploration, loving to dance with life, as you use that so well in your writings, teachings. And so feeling like if I was in the era now and very young, I would be definitely bisexual and maybe multiple partners. Given that at this time wouldn't feel like it would benefit us where we are in our lives, there's a sense of sometimes relaxing into his needs being different from mine. So can I be in a place of just offering if that's what he needs? Other times feeling I don't want to just be needed for that. And so I need to be able to feel honest and heard. And when I'm not, and if it turns us away from each other, it's usually very brief. Getting our sense of connection from so many friends. So there's a feeling of this sexual relationship as a place that's so unique for us that oftentimes being best friends for so long, we'll just be in the midst of making love and one of us will say, and we can do this too. How
So
beautiful,
great.
how fun. And we can keep exploring and loving to look at kind of Kama Sutra like books and the book called Vagina and reading that out loud. And having raised a child and homeschooled her, so she was always around, that I was more conscious of not wanting to ever make her uncomfortable. She could come in and we had a family bed for, I don't know, first 10 years. So that definitely changed things and maybe made it less invigorated than you would have liked, whereas I was fine. So I also felt like we had different sexual needs. I can go a long time and it's not on my mind. And then I don't want to be judged for not being sexual enough. I notice I'll have a part come up and wonder, is my kidney energy just low, which relates to sexuality? What do I need here? Is it because I know him so well and it's predictable sometimes? So I like to question and wonder and say it out loud and say it to him, and that's part of the communication style that we have, is trusting enough to be really honest and to feel like, how is it for you? I need to know, and I also want you to listen how it is for me, and do those match right now or not? So we go through waves.
Just to acknowledge the courage of both of you speaking so openly here with people who are also your students and all, just to really appreciate that courage, but also the courage you have with each other. So trust and courage go together, like a horse and carriage. Because without, again, because I have, my database of stories is in thousands, and the number of miserable marriages tied into sexuality, and so much of that miserableness is because of lack of trust and lack of communication. It is not safe for one or both of the partners to speak openly about this. And how do you get there? You get there slowly, by slowly practicing. You don't jump in. You don't come off this podcast today and go to your partner and say, "Well, I really want to tell you all these things." Not a good idea. But you can start to introduce the idea of that there's maybe another level that we can explore and gain from each other that will actually freshen the relationship. And you just have such a wonderful living example of it that you've just heard. And because things are difficult at times, it doesn't mean anybody's doing anything wrong. Nobody's doing anything wrong, but we get vulnerable and we think, well, I'm either doing something wrong or they're doing something wrong, so somebody's at fault here, and then we start to make narratives around fault. But again, with the two of you, you're amazing at still keeping in the exploring the relationship rather than going to fixed story.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah.
Yeah. So that being a real takeaway from this for all of you. Again, you may not be in a relationship now, and you may not be in a relationship because of this kind of problem, but to hear that it is possible. It is possible. It does take trial and error, and dukkha, this Buddhist word of meaning, it's translated most often as suffering, but it really more accurately would start with dissatisfaction or unsatisfactory, unreliable, and include physical pain and emotional pain, the pain of not being able to communicate, to not get on the same page, to not have your needs met, to feel someone losing interest in you. All of that is dukkha. A friend of ours named Eugene Cash, he when he's teaching, he will say, well, as long as you understand that a relationship is dukkha, then you'll get along great together. and
he and Pam have a great relationship.
Yeah, he and Pam have a great relationship. But it is, we have a wrong idea in our cultural thing of self-improvement, that it's supposed that we're supposed to get it perfect, that it's supposed to get it right. But in the Buddhist psychology is that the suffering is what leads to the growth. So if you were just tuned out and therefore you weren't suffering, you become indifferent. There's no growth in that. The friction is what forces us to look deeper, to look for more insight. And again,
so I've helped him grow a lot.
Yeah. so generous of you. Would you say that that have you experienced time when friends have been less than supportive of your relationship for one reason or another? That and I don't mean best friends or anything. It could be any level of friends, but that, because one of the things I stress when I lead a marriage ceremony is I say to everyone there, you're signing up. if you're in this room, you're signing up to be supportive. And I'm a little tough about it because I know of so many instances where in the name of flirting or just to stir trouble or just a frenemy, being a little picky. So have you had experiences like that at some points in your relationship?
So I was just speaking with someone yesterday about the need to sort in terms of where they are in their life at this point and whether or not the people that are in their life at this point are the people that still need to be there. Are they at the same level of awareness and growth? And this is not about judgment or hierarchies or anything like that. I just mean, does this person fit with you? Does this person serve who you are and what you want to continue to become? And so that, Sarah and I have been really, really good at that sorting process, meaning we've been able to identify people who we felt weren't fully supportive of who we were, and to figure out ways to marginalize them, and then finally just disappear into the distance as the kindest way I can think of to.
What a skill. That is such good fortune to have that, to have the discipline and willingness to do that. Because oftentimes people are too afraid to sort like that.
Yeah.
I was remembering of some female friends in maybe the early years together that I just didn't trust around you. And because he also is so friendly, I was afraid that they were misinterpreting his connection with them and then just feel scared and undermined, and then blame it on him and realize it wasn't that he would change, because it could be a man or it could be someone I knew that wasn't attractive, that he would still be that same open-hearted
Yes.
being that he is. And so I grew in trusting some depth that we shared, that he showed me. And it did take quite a while to go to parties together and to just not have to be by his side and know I'm safe here with all these people being magnetized towards him, because he's had that his whole life. It's what I signed up for in connecting to him. And it just dropped away so completely. Yeah. And so I would say
Not
that
before a lot of dukkha.
yeah, it dropped away a long time ago, but it lasted a long time. That was my own inner work, that I had to take it off his problem, take that to my therapist and my inner work of, it's often not so much, I find, what is better about that person that he might enjoy being with, but what am I undermining about myself that I'm not worthy in this situation for Ty to stay in commitment with me now that he's met this new vivacious person. And that took time to grow, to just
Beautiful, beautiful,
come home to
beautiful.
self-love. And that's been such a process, and it's not finished, but my trust in him feels really rock solid for the last, I don't even know, long time.
That was a difficult. Those were difficult times because I am someone who's open and really want to share, and I'm out there in that way. And then, at the end of a party or an interaction, on the drive home or whatever,
Process time.
process time, and
He's like,
and really that fine line of really wanting to listen, feel into that, absorb how she's feeling, and yet being firm about that. That's yours. That's not mine. Because there was this request, as there would be. Can you change yourself so that I'm a little more comfortable with how you are? And so,
which
of
is really
course,
the hope that then that'll make me feel secure wherever I go, which no one can do for you. And the
Yes.
Dharma that I finally committed to regularly inside myself as a practice was the medicine I needed. But before, of course, I thought if he changed, you can change me. I'm giving you all my power. And then I had to take that back. And he actually was really good about boundaries and would just say, I'll talk about this for a while, but then he would say, we're going to stop here. And I would get extra agitated, like, but I'm not done. I won't be done for 10 more years.
Again, I just bow to the two of you in this. You don't think I got to get out of here. I am more quick to think, oh, I can't do this than the two of you. So I really, I did not have role modeling like you, Sarah. I had terrible role modeling. So, and just, I mean, no good examples. So I feel that challenge that you have. I want to switch here for a moment. I don't know how many people realize the life you two have lived together, where you have been all over the world, you've lived all over the world. You have certainly you've created residence for a while in different places like London and so forth. You could name names if you want to of places, but the other thing that's so extraordinary is you've lived in so many people's homes as guests. They're out of town and they've given you their home or their second home that they're not using right now. You have lived a lifestyle in that sense that would be the kind of lifestyle of the very, very rich, because it's been amazing because of your roles as teachers and the way you've taught internationally. And at the same time, you've also gone all around the world with this young child and self-taught this young child under all of these different circumstances. Looking back on that, is there something like, in one sense, it's like, how did you pull that off? I know their daughter, and I'm deliberately not saying her name because I'm letting you what you would say or not say, respecting her privacy. But she's a wonderful young woman, and it was an amazing childhood for her. I mean, like someday she'll write this great book or make a movie out of it, I'm sure. But just looking back on that, is there something that you see as a kind of shared wisdom? Like, oh, there's a truth here that if I look at it, these were the things I held true to that made all that work for each other and for her. Anything you would share with us about that?
This is your Williams.
The view that I think we both shared was, what would it be like if from the beginning a person had this opportunity to find what they're interested in by being exposed to lots of ideas and creative aspects of reality on this planet, and be able to maintain some sense of agency in their learning experience. So we didn't just follow the long-time communities of homeschooling parents, but we went more even towards what's called unschooling, which is, what would it be like to raise a child with awareness as the central aspect of respect? What would make her feel buoyant and awake to herself all along her growth cycles? So we studied a lot about child psychology and appropriate timing. We read a lot of books. We joined a parenting congregation 5 years before we got pregnant, so we could really take this on together, studying all about what Steiner thought and wondering together, if you were raised in Tibet or in the Congo or in New York City, you'd have very different influences of what matters for a human to become self-reliant and happy. And so what if we just looked kind of cross-culturally and at all these different educational outlooks and then kind of designed it ourselves? It was quite an experiment. It was risky. We didn't know what the experiment would
Produce.
share.
We had a strong sense, obviously. And as we saw her grow and change, we realized, okay, we seem to be on the right track here.
And we were also, as she became older, we were inviting her into the conversation constantly. We would actually go and sit in on classrooms of different styles of education. We'd ask if we could come for a day, like people looking to come to that school. And then the three of us would sit down and have a discussion. So is what we're giving you in comparison to what you saw these other kids are receiving for a day for the next year of your life, because you have to commit ahead of time, because either choice is going to have challenges and times when you hate it. So you're going to have to commit for a year. And so each year we would write down the pros and cons. We'd have this few-week discussion, and then we'd all sign it. Because we sometimes were like, can we just send you to school now? We've had it. And other times she was like, I don't want to be around you as parents, let alone my teachers. And I'm, so we knew there would be hard times, but
here's the contract.
You've got another 4 months. And then of course
I remember the year you had her that you lived here in Northern California so she could go to a regular school for a year.
That was when she turned 14 and she said, now I want to meet more boys. So put me in a big school where I can meet all kinds of kids. So we stayed put so she could go to this 1,000-person public school.
2,000 perhaps, yeah.
And then wound her way into, the mean girls within a few weeks, and then went through all the suffering of that. It was great, all of it. But I would say the willingness to discuss it, to not have a hard line idea either way, to shift gears each year if need be, just like we did with our relationship. We would often say to each other, are each of us still the best person for the other, to feel like you're growing and opening in ways that you want to now? Because I might feel that way, but he might not. So that was something we constantly.
It's not an easy question to ask, as you might imagine, because
not at all.
The answer could be devastating,
yes,
or just a serious change in life.
So
and maybe I needed more time on my own at certain points, because I was so young when we got together. So I'd go off to another country, or I'd go off on a 5-month retreat, and he would feel very supportive of that. And that came into our unschooling, was let's see each year what's appropriate for all three of us. And then it lasted. She went out of that public school. Actually, 3 months in, she came to us one day and said, people are making fun of me carrying books in my backpack. That's not cool. And so I am also now starting to fear that I'm losing my love of learning by just the way the teachers are treating us in the class. And so we said, okay, then 1 year is your commitment and you can stop. And then we learned that certain colleges take homeschoolers early. So we suggested she could apply if she liked. And she went to this wonderful, small, very intimate school of Sarah Lawrence at the age of 16. And so she moved to New York. She had already actually lived in Paris at 15 as an au pair away from us from 15 to 16. So there was a maturity in being raised globally and with parents that were open to her feedback about what she wanted to learn next. We just constantly went to the library. She read voraciously. Another child might have been really difficult to homeschool, but she picked up books at 6 years old, and then she's never stopped.
That's so great. I want to again pause here. You're hearing two people that were on the same page take risks together and have a remarkable experience together. That may not suit you or suit your partner, but you can have your version of that at a different level or look different ways. You can have the same amount of intensity, but it look quite different. One of the things that I do in of my retreat teaching and with change and transition work is that I have people take a vow of renunciation, and two of the renunciations is judging and comparing. So when you hear some of these remarkable things, one can easily fall into comparing mind. Like, oh, well, I haven't done, why couldn't I, da, 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 da. Not helpful. That's not wisdom. And likewise with judging, well, I'm not adventuresome like that, therefore I'm a weak person, or whatever you might come in your mind, or you go, that's not a way to raise a child. You could go that way with your experience. So the when we don't judge and compare, what we listen for, what we feel into, is a discernment as to what's skillful or unskillful, and a way that leads us to wisdom and compassion. So we're not interested in creating identity. I am like this, judging, or they're like that, that's judging, or I'm better than, worse than, or even the same as. We're at the Buddhist path is rejecting those. The Buddhist said, absolutely don't consider yourself the same as. Just stay out of that whole neighborhood of judging and comparing. So this is their intrepidness that they're revealing they're revealing it's yet another iteration of that intrepidness, this willingness to be available and see what happens. So just those cautions to everyone. I'm aware of our time here. We've only got
Oh my goodness.
a few minutes.
Oh.
It's been so rich an experience for me, and exceeded even what I was, aspiring towards. And we would love to hear from you if whether you're hearing this, if you're live now or you're hearing this and watching this on a tape later. It would be great through B Studio to get it, to let us have some feedback. Did you find this worthwhile? And I've appreciated the comments in chat, and you're welcome to do more chat here at the end. But so thinking back, many of the people here that are listening and will be listening are far younger than we are, and we are of different ages. I'm the old here. I'm the senior, but why? There was a story in the New York Times about there's now more unmarried people than married people, and also it really varies by color, and all of this, like black men being the most unmarried people, and this was news to me. And if I'd had time, we would have done a whole thing about all of that, because I've been very interested in your opinions of this. But it's too heady, and we're wanting to stay in the heart and live our lives, the immediacy of our lives. So this, because that's what this is about. But as you think about these people and their uncertainty, that the world is uncertain in a different way than when you were young. It's uncertain in a very different way. We had our threats of nuclear and war with Russia and all of this, and we had the civil rights movement, all very tough things. But this is tough in a whole new way. The pandemic seems to have awakened people to the idea that life is better to do it as a couple. That they've realized in the pandemic, this has come up in all sorts of statistics about people realizing, oh, marriages are up and all of this, because realizing, oh, it's that facing life as a couple offers a wider range of possibility, and somehow they're discovering that. So, but other people, there's again the statistics in the overall pattern showing this more of a kind of moving away from even it being, its statistics apply to committed relation, living together, not married. It's not just the marriage, it's just literally not doing this together anymore. What would you say, each of you, as we close, for why to do this? Why take the chance on this? Why take the chance?
All right, so I don't know if this is just my personality or my cultivation, or conditioning, upbringing, but I love loving someone, and I love sharing that love and that connection and commitment on a daily basis. And that's just so rich for me. And that's my reason for doing it.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah. There's so much that I've uncovered that I wouldn't have had I not allowed myself the risk of showing all of my colors to him and still feeling lovable and feeling like to love him in all of his sides was growing me into a mature woman that would have taken much longer had I lived alone all of these years or intermittent relationships. There's a way in which being in this shared experience and having such a soft place to land where quietude can be held together, that I have a strong independent streak, but realize so much when I'm off in retreats on my own in the wilderness, how meaningful it is to share this life with someone and to know each other so intimately, like no one else on the planet knows me. And knowing him in a way that knows you some ways more than you know you. You know, that quality is such a privilege to have found that. And I was very interested, knowing myself as a young woman. I wanted that. And so I feel extremely fortunate and so thankful to you being here, and hope that whichever one of us isn't here anymore for the other, that what we will carry in our hearts can be shared with another partnership. Because as you can hear from both of us, we want that. I want that for him if I leave soon or whenever I do into the light. And he being such a great partner that somebody else would benefit from that really soon after I'm gone.
Wow. Thanks to both of you. Thanks for modeling the adventure of love so well, the courage of love, for sharing so openly, and that you can share and still be safe. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Philip. This
Thank
has
you,
been
Philip.
such
Beautiful.
a treat.
Beautiful teachings in the midst of asking
Yeah.
us questions. So
Thank you
for that.
I feel so enriched. Now we'll turn it off and go in the direction he would like us to.
That sounds great.
Thank you, Jen,
Thank
and
you,
everybody
Jen.
at Studio
Everyone,
B.
great show.
Do we just end now, or do you want to make an ending, just end?
I just wanted to thank you so much, all of you, for being here with us today. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Sarah, give me a